following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. And a 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Round number 7 of this season's Monday night V8 Supercar Official Series Championship brings us to the former concrete jungle before took that time. The mystique and challenge of the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve will always rage on as drivers battle high curbs, slow to medium speed corners, and the wall of champions itself. Whilst we are still a long way away from finding who will be this season's champion, what we do know is the title battle could hit boiling point tonight, as the championship lead between Sam Blacklock and Brett Loxton is the smallest it's been since round 1 many weeks ago at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. This is 44 laps of action you do not want to miss, as drivers will have pinpoint accuracy tonight if they want to survive, let alone compete. I'm Bo Albert, and alongside me is Mr. Zach Canlin with our favourite broadcasting Kiwi, Scott Fountain, on the cameras as we are broadcasting live on the iRacing Esports Network, of course brought to you by SimSpeed TV. And Zach, we don't see this circuit too frequently on the calendar, which I personally think is a bit of a shame because it does, but when it does appear on the schedule, all the drivers know it is sure to throw up a few curveballs.
Yeah, well, you know, this V8 Supercar is so critical on traction, and there are a lot of places around this track where you need to be very critical with how you get that power down to ensure that you get a really fast lap time. And it also is really easy to make a mistake around here for the same reason as well. So we see a lot of good battles coming up throughout these races, and there's some pretty good opportunities like down into turn 1, down into the hairpin towards the end of the lap, and a couple of other opportunities to make some overtaking maneuvers. So it's always a good track to have a race at, and it's really fun to drive as well. So I couldn't agree more. I think we should definitely have it on the calendar a little more, but luckily for us, we are here tonight, and we're going to have some great action this evening.
Yeah, we definitely should, because right now we're in qualifying where drivers have to make every use of the corner as Brett Loxton throws it through the final chicane on his way to set his first qualifying lap of the night. Already a few times on the board, but he is going to go and not set a lap time at all. He finally registers and he goes to the top. So Brett Loxton doing what he has to do to keep the championship nice and close. But unfortunately for him, Jordan Ross has just gone a little bit quicker, and then Kazuki Umashima goes even faster again. So Umashima, who won last time out at the Nürburgring, continuing his form once again, goes 2 tenths quicker than Jordan Ross, who is 2 tenths quicker than Brett Loxton. So it's all nice and close at the moment as the rest of the drivers slowly begin to file in their lap times, which we're seeing around the low 37 range for our quickest drivers. So around the circuit, a 37 is very, very quick, and only a matter of tenths of a second of what you would expect from a Porsche Cup car. So the V8's definitely working around the circuit quite nicely. There's a few more drivers getting nice and close to the wall. I was having a look there at David Moore, who just about slams the wall on his way on his second lap at the moment. And he's a driver we don't see too often recently, but he's managed to find himself in the top 10 immediately. So that's great there, as Corey Preston now does his lap time and goes to P4. So once again, continuing his form. But one driver that hasn't set a lap yet and needs to is Sam Blacklock, and he's coming to the hairpin now, Zach.
Yeah, Sam having a bit of a shocker last time out, and really looking for a little bit of redemption here. Last time out, he qualified down, I believe, and it was around P14, P16, something around there. So he definitely has a little bit of work to do in terms of his qualifying performance after last week. So he's coming down the back straight now into the final chicane, which is just so difficult in any car, but especially in a V8 Supercar. You really need to hit those curbs as cleanly and as hard as you possibly can. Hard on the brakes is Sam Blacklock as he comes into this final complex here. Healthy amount of curb on the entry, nice amount on the exit, gets the power down nice and smoothly, brings it back across the track. So he's probably going to go and have another lap here. And that first lap is not going to be registered. So that is going to be very uneasy for Sam Blacklock there. He really needs to make this one count. I think he's got a little bit of damage to that front right quarter, so he might have tapped something on his first lap there.
Yeah, he very well might have, but he's on a lap at the moment, Zach. So why don't you give us a bit of a tour whilst I try and fix up a few little mic issues?
Yeah, not a problem at all. So coming through turn number 4 here, I think he might have just hit the inside of that wall there, but that's not going to worry us for the rest of this lap. Through the right-hander here, this is a critical point to really make sure you get that traction down smoothly, and you can see the rear of Sam's car just dancing around there as he comes down the second straight. Brake hard just before the bridge, take a healthy amount of curb through this first part, try and ride the second one as well, and then get the power down again. The spool diffs in these V8 Supercars make that very difficult, but Sam doing a great job so far. Now the hairpin, very hard under brakes. Sam just coming across a little bit towards that apex, runs a little bit wide to try and get a little bit more exit speed. And you've really got to straighten up, because if you have to turn too far right, for that little kink in that exit at the corner there, it can really unsettle the car and back down the rear or the final straight and into the final chicane once again. We'll see if he can put down a time this time for Sam Blacklock, because he really needs to get one in now. He's definitely not going to have time for another lap, and just a little bit untidy through the last part of that chicane there. And Sam Blacklock comes across the line with a 1:37.5, so that's not too bad for Sam. Position number 4, just behind his teammate Jake Burton, but critically ahead of Brett Loxton, who he's very much fighting in this championship for.
Yeah, exactly. So that is critical for Sam to make sure he gets that position, and he's managed to do exactly that. So good work there, as there's only a couple more drivers on laps at the moment, but most of them look like they're on their third lap. One driver that's not on their third lap and is still on a hot lap is Andrew Welter, making his way onto the back straight now. So make sure you get a good exit, because that exit there compromises your speed all the way down. So if you muck that up just a little bit, you're going to see that delta get lower and lower at every passing meter as you prepare yourself for the big braking zone at the Wall of Champions. So we'll see what he can do, how late he's willing to go, and he's going so late on the brakes that he's just going to go straight into the pit lane. So with qualifying over, we have our grid once again, and leading it from pole position will be Kazuki Umeshima, who leads Jordan Ross on the front row of the grid. Jake Burton and Sam Blacklock, the Trans-Tasman Racing row number 2 on the grid, with Brett Loxton rounding out the top 5, who shares row number 3 with Corey Preston. Wayne Burke kicks things off from P number 7 with Sam Sutton, Chris Coxhead, and Cole Stokes, your top 10.
Yeah, then we have David Moore starting from position number 11. Harley Haber will look to fight his way up through from 12th. Brett Cananzi sitting in 13th position, and Emily Jones starting from 14th. Ross Rizzo, who had a shot at the VSR Showdown on the weekend, back for the V8s and starting position number 15 for tonight. Andrew Welter will start from 16th. Then we have Thomas McMillan starting from 17th position. Brian Borg will be joined alongside him. And we have the team, or not teammates anymore, but Michael Cracknell and Riley Blythe, a very familiar company for each other down there on the 9th row of the grid.
Yep, and then after that, we do have Mario Vlasic in 21st, Greg Sharp 22nd, Mayo Ladyshev, Mark Samuel, and Steve Jansen, your top 25. It's a very big grid here tonight. Goes all the way out to P number 32, which is rounded off by David Miller, Stephen Varga, Warren Pickering, Ryan Shelton, and then drivers not getting any times on the board. A big shock with Brady Myers, a very quick driver, not getting a lap in this time around, as well as 3rd place in the VSR Showdown, Mitch McLeod and Andrew Zackerson, not getting the lap that he would have wanted. So he will have to have a lot of work to make his way through the field here today. But more importantly, how do they make it through turns 1 and 2, a very tough, complex section of corners? So it's going to be all about having a bit of patience, willing to give the guy next to you a little bit more room, and make sure that you can all get through nice and cleanly. Getting ready for the rails, which are indeed going up now, so the lights will be going out in any moment. You can see the flames spitting from 650 horsepower, which gets launched away through the rear Dunlop's car. Squirrel, Jordan Ross really fighting for traction as he makes his run into turn number 1 and 2. And you can see they're all bottling up in contact. And around goes championship leader Sam Blacklock at another hit. Your championship leader is off already, and Brett locks him with big damage as well. It's continuing into turns 1 and 2 as cars try and make their way through cleanly, but it's not going. It's gone. Brett Cananzi big time into the wall, which creates a big bottleneck further down in the pack as cars jostle to try and make their way through. But unfortunately, already a lot of casualties here, Zach.
Yeah, and Sam Blacklock, he almost had like a, you know when you double bounce someone on a trampoline? He just got double punted into the wall out of turn 1 there. Minor incident just absolutely catapulted him into the wall, and he's carrying very heavy damage. Still quite a few cars. That's a CMR car. I think that's Steve Jansen on the inside at turn number 5 there, having a bit of trouble. So yeah, a few cars having a little bit of an issue as they came into the turn 1 and 2 complex there. And that's a slowdown for Kyle Stokes as well, as he's coming out of, I believe that's turn number 8 there, corner before the hairpin. So lot of interesting things just occurred on that first lap there. And Greg Sharp, who started very lowly in this field, is missing his boot, but he's found himself a bunch of positions since the start of this race subsequently because of all that contact. But looks like the leaders, the top 3 cars, Umashima, Jordan Ross, Jake Burton, have all gotten off to a clean start, and Preston and Sutton now in tow to try and work their way onto that lead group.
Yeah, well, that's what they're going to have to do. Is it does appear like I've managed to fix my mic, so finally it should not sound like I'm speaking from the toilet, as my director has indeed informed me. But you're definitely right, because Corey Preston, he is leading this pack now, and he's a long way away from this top 3. So if they can just find a little bit more time, they might be able to join this battle pack. But Kazuki Umashima already building out a little bit of a margin from Jordan Ross, already 7/10 of a second. So they make their way onto the second lap now. But you know Jordan Ross, he's a fighter. He's not going to let this go, as well as Jake Burton, always a feisty driver. So regardless, even if Corey Preston and the rest of the pack cannot quite catch up, we know we've got an interesting fight here for our race lead today. Of course, 44 laps, that is not an easy stretch at all, so we will be expecting pit stops at some point during this race. So it should get pretty feisty for quite a lot of drivers, including Sam Blacklock, who's having to make his way through the field and already doing a pretty good job, already up to 20th, but he has lost 16 spots, but he's ahead of Mitch McLeod, who has found himself up 10 spots, which is a great effort there, as we have drivers serving slowdowns, including Andrew Welter, who caused a little bit of a bottleneck heading into the chicane, into the hairpin, and Wayne Burke takes big advantage of that, dives to the inside, and manages to take the spot away. So for Wayne Burke, another spot there, but for Andrew Welter, unfortunately falling through the pack, as so many cars do have that damage. Like you said, Greg Sharp, one of those cars, Zach, and that's going to hurt them quite a lot down this long straight.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just want to touch on something you mentioned before. I mean, we've both mentioned it before, I think, in this race so far, that we didn't mention pre-race. As I see another car of Harley Haber, who is up in P6 doing it, is slowdowns. This track, as I think you and I know from quite a lot of experience, Bo, is so bad for slowdowns. You can just hit one of these chicanes poorly, and you can lose 3 seconds out of your race just by one little mistake, such as Harley Haber just made. So, and we've already seen several cars do it so far. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be really critical in terms of the race this evening. And I think Wayne Burke is having a little bit of a move as well. Just trying to find him in this field. We've had so many incidents today. It's all a little bit crossed up at the moment. But Wayne Burke is sitting behind, he's just made his way past Greg Sharp, and he's now trying to make his way up to the All-Star Motorsports car of Thomas McMillan, who is following quite closely behind Brian Borg as well. Brian Borg is definitely a tough customer when it comes to racing, and he'll be difficult to get past. So Wayne Burke has a little bit of a challenge ahead of him. But as I've said before, I think Wayne's a man who can contest this championship if he maintains his presence a little longer and qualifies a little better. So he'll definitely try and work his way through these guys.
Yeah, and his teammates trying to make his way through as well, as David Moore manages to, is fighting for a spot against the Synergy Sim Racing car, but will lose out to Kyle Stokes, who have made a very big move at the hairpin and manages to find a way past. So lots of changing in the mid-pack at the moment, because like you said, so many drivers out of position that we would normally expect. And they're having to fight their way through as Brian Borg finds his way past Michael Cracknell, who's not going at a rate of speed because slowdowns once again strike another driver. And you can see he made one little mistake through the hairpin and spots and has to go defensive once again with a Greg Sharp right behind. So it's so costly this that it can easily be upwards of Synergy Sim Racing car of Wayne Burke has all the progress here. Last few laps goes down, almost ruins his race as well through the grass, and that could be another slowdown. He might get away with it, but as you can see, it's oh so easy. The side by side in the background, Andrew Welter and Kyle Stokes. Really, that is not a corner you want to be side by side. And they're going to go again, almost 3 wide. This is not a place to be 3 wide. And as you can see, bumper to bumper, knocking panels off each other's cars. And it's still continuing in the background as it's bumper to bumper once again with Sam Blacklock and the rest of that little pack all beginning to get into this as well. So it's getting very close at the moment as they head into the final real chicane on this lap, apart from the Wall of Champions. And it's getting very, very close as Mario Vlasic doesn't get a run. And look at the checkup it causes as Carl Stokes now serves a slowdown. And immediately cars have to dart out of the way to get avoiding action. Going defensive into the chicane now is about 3 different cars. And this could get messy now as the 2 Synergy Sim Racing cars get very close. Carl Stokes takes advantage of Sam Blacklock going wide. And Blacklock will have to sit behind, but he doesn't look like he's going to want to do that. He's going to fight this all the way down the straight. And this will be where you get a bit of an idea of just how much the damage can hurt you. But it looks like he's managing to hold on for the moment. But it's how brave is Sam Blacklock willing to be into the chicane? The answer is he doesn't have to be, because Carl Stokes plays the long game and decides to sit behind.
Well, Carl Stokes, I think, actually went into the wall, and that's another slowdown there. That's Wayne Burke once again. He just can't catch a break right now. He's gotten like 3 slowdowns in the last 3 laps, which is just absolutely crazy for him, and he's dropped a bunch of positions once again. But Carl Stokes actually hit the curb funny at the chicane and sent himself into the wall just what checked that whole pack up. But there's still some racing going on because behind David Moore, Brady Myers, who's very much out of position, has worked his way past through Wayne Burke. And now Riley Blythe, who's a very fierce racer, as well as Brett Loxton tucked in just behind him, are looking to make their way through. So these guys are all fighting down in 20th positions. We would expect pretty much all these guys to be inside the top 10. So it's going to be interesting to see all these cars coming back through the field as they are so much out of position. And we do have a very long race this evening.
We've completely missed something, Zach, because Kazuki Umeshima is not leading the race and hasn't been for a while. 5.3 seconds down and down in 5th place as well. So his car looks fine, so I'm going to imagine that is a slowdown penalty, but we do have a new race leader because Jordan Ross now has a 0.6 of a second advantage over our 2nd place, Jake Burton. So the entire makeup of this race has changed a little bit as Burton really attacks the final chicane there, trying to gain a bit of time, and he is gaining time because you can see the gap is coming down bit by bit there between himself and Jordan Ross, and the gap now comes down to 0.4 of a second just from the bravery he showed into the final chicane. So good job there from Jake Burton to claw in a bit more time. And we have a fight on for our race lead now, as well as P number 3, because Corey Preston is not having an easy time holding off Sam Sutton.
No, and so he shouldn't, because Sam Sutton is very fast in a V8 supercar, and another guy who is always not, he's not afraid to race, and neither is Corey Preston. And now Kazuki Umeshima is coming up behind these guys as well. So Sam's going to know that he needs to get a move on at this time if he wants to possibly get carried up to the front by Kazuki as well. And long race, so long games to play. He might just let him through fairly easy, but a lot of the times in these V8 supercars, they just want to play for keeps at every opportunity. So don't doubt that that's going to happen. By the way, did go back and see what happened to Kazuki Umeshima, a slowdown at turn number 1, and he didn't really clear it fast enough. So I think he actually took a lot more of a time penalty than he really needed to, and you can see he is starting to close on Sam Sutton, especially in those braking zones already. And Emily Jones has had a fantastic race as well. Started 14th, up into 6th position. She's one of the biggest movers of the race as it stands so far. And she's got Chris Coxhead behind her, so see if she can start moving herself up towards the back of Kazuki. And maybe Emily being in Japan, she can harness that power of Kazuki and pull herself up to the front with him.
Yeah, maybe. So maybe it's doing her a little bit of good, and she's got to find another position here as one of the CMR car goes a bit of rallycross, and that's actually Steve Jansen multiple laps down. But a bit of an unconventional way through turn number 1 to just completely cut it and use the pit entry. But whatever floats your goat, Steve Jansen, it's one way to get out of the way, as it's not settling down in the mid-pack as Sam Blacklock and Andrew Welter involved in battle, as well as Mario Vlasic, who found himself getting past from Thomas McMillan, who goes deep into turn number 2, but manages to hold onto the pack. But look at this for a little battle group, because not only do you have this, but oh, look at that as Vlasic now dives back to the inside of McMillan, who must have had some kind of issue on the exit, and now gets very close to the exit wall as well, and the cars behind have to check up. So it's side by side once again for Blacklock and Andrew Welter as they make their way now to turn number 5, a big braking zone, but not big enough for Sam Blacklock to do anything on the outside line, and has to fall back in the line. But with the tighter line he's had to take, Cole Stokes could get a bit of a run here if he's brave enough on the throttle, but looks like once again just willing to sit behind for a couple more corners, as this battle pack is not slowing down anytime soon. And as I was trying to say, is now one of the TTL cars looks for the move up the inside of Warren Pickering, but can't quite find the move he is looking for, and has to back out of that one. But Stephen Varga now bringing his train back into this fight. And this is a massive pack because it includes, I'm trying to find out what position it includes, it goes all the way down to Andrew Zackerson in position number 28. So a massive pack of cars. You can see on the exit now, they're all fighting for traction. Sam Blacklock now side by side for the 3rd time in a single lap, trying to find a way past the Velocity sim racing car of Andrew Welter. So this is not an easy pass for Sam Blacklock, who, you know, really has to start scoring points in this championship. He has to find a way to get some points back, because, oh, as the ASM car in front goes for a huge drift, and McMillan will spin the car around and doesn't quite hit the wall. Well, now he does, because he's flick spun it into the little gap in the wall, and Thomas McMillan will quit the race. He is out of here after a massive moment entering the chicane.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for him, but Mitchell McLeod's having to defend very hard from Riley Blythe and from David Moore, and Brett Loxton and Harley Haber, I think, are starting to get up there as well. Maybe not. I think that's actually Mark Samuel I was getting confused for, and David Miller up in there as well in the Redback Racing machine. So very, very tight little pack going on here, and Riley Blythe has managed to get himself past the car of Mitchell McLeod, who did very well, took himself home a trophy on the weekend at the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown. But unfortunately, right now, he is under massive pressure as well from Brett Loxton, who's still trying to make his way through this field. And we said last race, you know, seeing Sam Blacklock have those unfortunalities last time round, it's not impossible that we can see a bit of an upset in the championship here. And so far, it's looking very interesting as it stands. I think
it's side by side into the hairpin once again. Look at this bumper car stuff. The TTL car up the inside there. Mitch McLeod also in there, almost spinning on the exit as well. And these guys are getting way too close at the moment as the ERT car goes for a massive slide there. I think that might have been Riley Blythe there, but a big moment there as he was all fighting for grip, as they now find their way heading down the straight, which is all going to get very, very close once again, Zach.
Yes, I think that's... Oh, yeah, Mitchell McLeod goes down the inside there at the final chicane. Very brave, but very confident on the brakes there and getting some good traction as he came out of the final corner. So he's going to get away with that one. And now Brett Loxton having a bit of a sniff around the back of ERT machine of Riley Blythe there. And that's a CMR car going out of the pit lane. So this could be interesting. He's going to do a good job there of staying out of the way of everyone. So don't know who that is, but to whoever that CMR car is, very nicely done staying out of the way of that battle. I think that's Steve Jansen there. But yeah, this train is pretty incredible, Bo. There are so many cars in here. As we said, almost going back 16 cars. This train, it's starting to break up a little bit more now as some of the faster guys are making their way through. But it's pretty amazing. I mean, look at that. There's about 10 cars within a second and a half of each other. I think Riley Blythe might have just gotten a slowdown there. So there's 8 cars within just a handful of seconds there, which is pretty incredible as we're 9 laps into this race right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We're having a look at David Miller at the moment as he makes his way through the chicane, but just in front we have Brett Loxton now with a slowdown. So second place in the championship, but falling a lot more than 2 places at the moment. Not what he needs. He needs to be capitalizing in this race, and that's not a way to do it, because even Riley Blythe, who had a slowdown earlier in the race, now finds himself past as well. So lots of things going on in terms of the championship here at this race, as the camera is being a little bit silly on my end, so it's hard to see all the views of what's going on. But this battle pack continues to rage on, as I'm sure they're coming down the back straight now, and we should have a few more passes coming up, Zach.
Yeah, no one really having much of a look into the final chicane there. There's a little bit of a drag race for Ryan Shelton and Steve Jansen, but they're a little bit off the pace comparatively. David Miller having to defend from Andrew Zackerson, who's going to try and take the inside line into turn number 1, but Zackerson decides to tuck back in and do it elsewhere. Andrew Zackerson, fairly new to this series, only really seen him around since the beginning of this season, and usually towards the later half of the pack, but has definitely shown some promise with his racecraft. And as we can see, of all the cars around him, his car definitely looks like it has the most panels left on it. That's for sure. Those Redback Racing cars up ahead, just looking a little bit worse for wear, as are all the other cars ahead of him. So keeping it clean is Andrew Zackerson, but now Stephen Varga is having a little bit of a look on Mitchell McLeod, who's just starting to fall his way back through the field. And you can see how much of a bottleneck he was. Brady Myers already way up the road in comparison. But Sam Blacklock still struggling to get past Mario Vlasic at this stage as well, who's been doing a good job to hold position number 12. But we'll go to Wayne Burke now, who was just behind those guys and actually got up alongside David Moore, but doesn't quite have the power. Or sorry, Stephen Varga doesn't quite have the power in that Synergy Sim racing car. A little bit of aerodynamic disadvantage for Wayne Burke, and unfortunately not going to be able to pull that one off. So it's not as much speed in that car as Wayne Burke would have liked, but he has had several slowdowns this race, and also looking like he's carrying a tiny bit of damage to the front end of that car, as well as just behind him, David Moore almost goes clean into the back of Wayne Burke there. And Wayne even giving Stephen Varga a little bit of a love tap on the exit of turn number 2. But quickly going to dart to our leaders, because we haven't had a chance to have a look at them for quite a while. Jake Burton leading the race, and Jordan Ross has fallen back a little bit now. 2.3 seconds the margin. Kazuki Umeshima has made his way past Sam Sutton and has just started pulling out a little bit of a gap there. And Emily Jones has been doing a good job to get herself up onto the back of Sutton and Preston, as Preston is now very close within striking distance of Sam Sutton as well. And Chris Coxhead is also just tucked up in behind Emily Jones, 0.8 of a second last time around, but looking a little bit further back this time. But that train for pretty much 15th all the way back until still, in fact, they're going side by side through the hairpin once again. Brett Loxton, Andrew Zackerson, and Riley Blythe are all involved, and all these cars are just so out of position at the moment. There are so many positions changing. We are actually missing quite a bit of what's happening up at the front, because Jake Burton did make his way past Jordan, and Kazuki did make his way past Sam, and they're changing positions every single lap down in the rear to mid pack here.
Yeah, they are. They're playing for keeps tonight, aren't they? And once again in the background, we're seeing another change of position as David Moore looks to the in-car of Stephen Varga and forcefully away. So that's another spot there for David Moore. Moves himself in a not hit from the back. As of the two Redback Racing Team cars, including Mark Samuel, just in the background, are trying to make ground. But another Redback Racing car in the background of David Miller. But the more important thing is Brett Loxton up the inside of Andrew Zackerson, not able to make it work. Loxton into the wall once again. Now side by side with the ERT car. I believe that's of Riley Blythe, a long way around the outside, having to hold traction quite nicely. There's the ERT car, but Loxton's almost knocking each other's mirrors off into the braking zone. And on the exit, who's going to be a little bit braver? It looks like the ERT car of Riley Blythe. Well, I say it's an ERT car, it's more of a Chevrolet Cruze at the moment with no rear wing. Both of them absolutely damaged from what happened in the early stages of the race, but Brett Loxton doesn't damage his race any further because he manages to hold on for now, but a bit deep into the right-hander means that once again Riley Blythe gets the better exit, and if he's willing to be a little bit aggressive, he could get a move done here into the hairpin. We'll see how brave he's willing to be. Not brave enough this time around, or decides just to play it a little bit safe, which is sometimes the smart call to make, as it looks like for the moment most of this pack has settled down, apart from Kyle Stokes, who's getting very close to the back of Sam Blacklock. Thought about a move there into the chicane, but had to back out as Sam Blacklock makes his way onto pit road, because we do have to take a pit stop in this race, and we have our very first cars now taking their pit strategy call now. And 12 laps in for a 44-lap race, that to me probably sounds like another 2-stop race, which if it was, that is fantastic news, because they always provide different strategies and add another element of spice.
Yeah, I think we are going to be in for a 2-stopper this evening. I think they can take roughly about 62 litres of fuel this evening per tank. So I think that'll get us about another 2 stops. Be surprised to not see Kazuki Umeshima or Jordan Ross start coming in the next lap. I think now is probably a good time to get some fresh tyres on the car if there's a bit of clean air as well. So we'll see. We'll see very shortly how long it does take for these guys to get through the pit lane here at Montreal. And for Kyle Stoke, it looks like a pretty good stop. He got through the pit lane in about 48.6 seconds, so not a bad stop there, as he just lets through his teammate actually of Wayne Burke, who has not pitted yet. So that's an interesting choice to make there. But if the leaders pit now, they'll probably be coming out around Brett Loxton and Riley Blythe, so, or maybe a little bit after that. So could potentially be a good time for some of these guys in the lead to pit now. They'll have clean air for at least a couple of laps, but the lap times are fairly dramatically off what we would or what they would have on fresh tires for sure. But none of the guys up the front are coming in this lap, so still have a couple more laps to see what is going on. And Jake Burton is still taking a very commanding control of this race. He's extended his advantage out to 3.8 seconds now, but Kazuki Umeshima has really started to claw in on Jordan Ross in the Synergy Sim racing car, and Jordan Ross just makes a little bit of a mistake there, losing the rear on the entry into the corner. We're now on board with Jordan Ross as he comes down into the hairpin. Very late on the brakes there. Nothing happening there from Kazuki Umeshima. Getting close to the mid-corner, but not being able to do too much and not getting the best exit either. So he's going to have to wait a little bit more, but you can see the lap times at the moment. Kazuki clawing that gap in by about 0.3 a lap.
Yeah, 0.3 a lap is quite the advantage. So, well, we do have our race leader coming in. So Jake Burton, the first to dive in, but second and third decide to stay out. So that's an interesting call. Maybe they're trying to make a one-stop out of this, but that would be quite the stretch considering so many cars are already diving into the pits. And he was not alone as well, because Harley Haber also deciding to come into the pits, but it looks like the majority are staying out. So maybe it's not the worst call in the world, because let's not forget the pace advantage on new tires is upwards of 2 seconds. But if you can just, eke the first stint out a little bit and claw it back in the pit stops, claw it back on track as well with fresher tires at the end of the race, that is such an advantage as well. So for Jordan Ross and Kazuki Umeshima, this is not over just yet. We'll see how the pit stop cycle does pan out in the end, as we're keeping an eye on a lot of the drivers who are just cycling in from their pit stops once more. So lots happening on track at the moment. It's interesting to see how many different strategies are happening at the moment as we look at Brett Loxton getting very racy into turn number 1, and a room left there by the LeBlanc car as we see the race leader coming out of the pits now, and he's only narrowly going to come out in front of this battle pack. So for Jake Burton, that was pretty critical for his race, because if he came out just behind them, that would have been a wall of traffic and would have used up all of his tires on his outlap just to make a pass happen. But unfortunately, he gets a little bit of clean air, and just look how quickly he's already bolted away from the very quick David Miller and Brett Loxton. So that just shows how useful new tires are and how much it affects your pace in the race. But the issue for him is that the car in front of Steven Varga, despite it being a pretty big gap, it could come down pretty quickly considering the difference in pace at the moment, as we see just behind Brett Loxton does find a way past the driver of David Miller. So a great move there for him as our race leader Jordan Ross comes in the pits, but Kazuki Umeshima stays out once again. So the top 3 cars, they're on 3 different strategies, which is fantastic to see. Sam Sutton continues on, but Corey Preston does not. And it looks like, for the most part, the majority of the pack are coming in this time around.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Kazuki and Sam still going round. Usually the advantage that you get from getting on the new tires a little bit quicker is pretty dramatic. We saw that the last 2-stop race was dominated by Wayne Burke, who basically came back from a 4-5 second deficit to take the lead of the race and eventually go on to win earlier this season. So surprising that neither of these guys have really thought about that and are continuing on at this stage. I think this could hurt them quite dramatically, but I mean, they're sitting in the seat. They've got their calculations for their race all down pat, and they're running to their numbers. So we'll have to see how that plays out for them. But I am surprised that they haven't decided to come in yet. 16 laps into this race, and safe to say that everyone else will still have to make an additional stop, and these guys will have to make 2 stops. So going to be very interesting towards the end of the race. Been seeing some good pit stop times out of some people. Sam Blacklock got a particularly fast stop in there, so maybe he's doing a little bit of fuel saving, as well as Andrew Zackerson and Kyle Stokes both had some pretty good pit stop times and pit lane deltas as well. I think I actually saw someone spin as they were coming into the pit lane, but now the leaders do finally come into the pit lane. So Kazuki Umeshima and Sam Sutton position number 1 and 2 as it stands, but it will not be the case once they leave the pit lane, unless these guys decide to take a lot less fuel than the rest of the pack and do a little bit of fuel saving. But they know how fast those cars are coming up, so that is an option that they have to take a little bit less fuel if they like. But I think to make it to the end of this race, they're going to need every drop in the tanks of these cars.
Yep, absolutely. As we are on board Jake Byrne as he fires his way out of the final corner, now comes across the start-finish line. You can see there on your left, goodbye Kazuki Umeshima and Sam Sutton. I'm going to take the race lead once again. So you can see there on this shot now that there's just not a car inside for Jake Byrne, so he will continue on this race lead. But the issue for him now is his tires are already 2 laps old, which doesn't sound like the worst, but compared to brand new tires coming out of the blankets this time around, he will be a little bit slower and he will be closed in over the next few laps. But the difference will be how it affects pit stop times in the second stop. And if Kazuki Umeshima can make that into an advantage and perhaps get a bit of an advantage against the rest of the cars, as Jordan Ross now tries to find, he's making good ground to try and close in on Jake Burton, but the gap there is pretty big as well, despite there only being a 1-lap difference. So we'll see how that all pans out at the end of this.
Yeah, that is a fairly significant gap to the lead for Jake Burton. So that coming in a little bit earlier than Kazuki as well. I mean, that's put him up about 10 seconds ahead of Kazuki Umeshima, and the gap was definitely not that substantial when they came into the pits. So I think you're right, Bo. If Kazuki can manage his middle stint here, he definitely won't have to fill up with as much fuel at the next pit stop unless Jake decides to do a little bit of fuel saving. He does have quite a bit of time out the front to do so, so he may choose to do that. But if Kazuki can do a little bit of fuel saving, or just take a lot less fuel than the guys up ahead, and he can make up a lot of the deficit that's been lost already, then he may be able to make something work here. And he has been looking very fast. Fastest lap of the race, but only just over Jake Burton.
Big contact, well, a little bit of contact there between Mario Vlasic and Mitch McLeod. We were on board there into the hairpin. You could see Mario just getting closer and closer and eventually bang into the side of Mitch McLeod and turned him around. And actually, it looks like Mitch's car is crabbing just a little bit, not horrendously, but it doesn't look like it's going in a straight line as it once was. So, bit of a disaster there for Mitch McLeod. And that's not what he would have wanted, as we now look at Andrew Welter firing his way through the final chicane and getting closer to the Synergy Sim Racing car just in front. So lots of cars just trying to make a bit of ground on their new tires. And this is the stint of the race that's really exciting, because you get all these different strategies, these different paces with the cars, with fuel loads, with tire wear and length of how long they've been on the car. And it just creates all these little battle packs as Andrew Welter continues to harass the car in front of Kyle Stokes. So For Stokes, well, he's not going to be stoked about what's in his rear mirror right now because Andrew Welter looking very racy as they head into 5 and 6. You can see just through the right-hander, he's closing in bit by bit. Decides to back out and actually does a lot of fuel saving there, does Andrew Welter. So he's well off the throttle, well in advance, and now on the throttle quite well as well, but not good enough to get any kind of run on Kyle Stokes in front. So he'll sit behind for another lap. But if he's just trying to fuel save a little bit and he's already off the throttle, he's fuel saving quite dramatically. So he's got no intentions of passing Kyle Stokes, but keep an eye out for Andrew Welter. Well, he might have intentions of getting past Kyle Stokes when he gets the slowdown, but Andrew Welter really trying to make this fuel last quite a while.
Yeah, he is. And as you said, he's definitely out of that throttle very early. And Kyle Stokes not doing himself any favors there by choosing to go, well, a bit early there on the corner and get himself a slowdown. But there are quite a few drivers who have been making that mistake. But yeah, I think that Andrew will do he'll be very well to himself if he can keep doing that fuel saving. As we said, if guys can sort out this middle stint, it might really set them up for a good run towards the end of the race on that final set of tires. So definitely something he's been thinking about. But comes down into turn 1 now, and you can hear he's just being very ginger in every respect. Very, very, very light on the throttle and also light through the gears, not really using much throttle to rev match on the gear changes there, which can cause a little bit of instability in the car, but definitely does save you a little bit of fuel if you can manage not to do it. So he'll have to keep on tracking around, but Chris Coxhead is getting a little closer now to the back of Harley Haber and has been doing so for the last lap or so. So see if Chris can make some more inroads here as he comes into the hairpin. Very good on the brakes compared to Harley Haber as Chris Coxhead goes for a little bit of a later apex as well. Really straight and nice on the traction too. So he's got a fairly clean car as well. Harley Haber, his car's not looking so fresh as it did at the beginning of this race. And you can see the closing speed for Chris Coxhead here as he dives to the right and goes down the inside into the final chicane. If he can pull it up, he'll have that move done. Don't slide it into the wall of champions, and he manages not to do so very nicely. So excellent job there from Chris Coxhead to move himself up another spot ahead of Harley Haber.
And great work there from Chris Coxhead to find himself up another spot. I unfortunately didn't get to see it because the servers, as you know, in iRacing have been a little bit unstable at the moment, but still a very good race panning out at the moment as I finally get pictures back. And indeed, Chris Coxhead making some good ground at the moment. He's already managed to pull out a pretty nice advantage over Harley Haber, about 0.3 or 0.4 of a second immediately. So he's clearly got pace in that car at the moment and trying to make it work around this Montreal circuit where so many cars are already battered and bruised with so much damage. As you can see, Greg Sharp on screen at the moment, and he's got no rear wing or bonnet as well. So lots of cars with battle scars, as we probably expect. And the bad news for the cars is we're not even halfway yet. There's still a long time to go in this race, a lot to pan out as well, because the gap at the out front isn't quite coming down between Jordan Ross and Jake Burton. But Jordan Ross versus Kazuki Umeshima is closing up, as the Kazuki is consistently the quickest car on circuit at the moment, punching out lap times about 0.2 of a second quicker than Jordan Ross. So if he can keep that up just lap by lap, Kazuki will be able to find himself onto a little bit of a battle pack with Jordan Ross. And we have seen those two have battles in the past, so always a good fight when those two are on circuit. But more importantly, if they do battle, that could be the advantage that Jake Burton needs, especially if he's going to have a much slower final pit stop.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's definitely something that all of these guys are going to have to be thinking about as they go through this middle stint here. And Jordan Ross is definitely got some good pace in that car, but it's just not enough to hold off the wrath of Kazuki Umeshima. And again, that last time around, Kazuki Umeshima fastest car on the track by about 0.4 to both Jordan Ross and Jake Burton there. So Jake Burton not able to pull away massively at the front of the field, and Kazuki Umeshima really starting to make some inroads now. Just 1 second separates him and Jordan Ross, but he does have to get through. Another car that is starting to make some moves is Brady Myers. He's finally worked himself up onto the edge, onto the back, pardon me, of Greg Sharp, who's been doing pretty well to keep himself up in 12th position at this stage of the race, given the condition of his vehicle, and given his starting position as well. Greg started 22nd, but Brady Myers started 30th. So Brady doing a very good job, already up nearly 20 positions to get himself. We'll see if we can make it inside the top 10, but right now he's trying to make life difficult for Greg Sharp. Just gets the left-hand side of the car on the grass there, which causes a bit of instability for him, but able to keep it all going, and just not quite able to get up as close as he would like onto Greg Sharp for this final hairpin here, but he's going to try and have a go anyway. Greg Sharp being respectful there, leaving the door very wide open, and Brady Myers is going to get himself up another position and one spot closer to the top 10.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great drive from Brady Myers at the moment. 19 spots is not a bad effort at all, and we are seeing in the chat a little bit of controversy between two drivers, so something's happened involving Corey Preston potentially, and also another driver, so we'll try and see what's happened there just a few laps ago. But Corey Preston, who was running very strong at the start of this race, now retired in the pits. So for Corey Preston, unfortunately, it's not going to be a repeat of what happened last round, where he did manage to take home a second place. But for Kazuki Umeshima, all of a sudden he's dropped off the back of Jordan Ross, as we can see, and he's beginning to be closed in, by Sam Sutton just a little bit. Sutton doesn't look like he has the best pace compared to Umeshima, but those little mistakes for Umeshima could potentially cost him any chance of a race win, especially if Jake Burton continues on his strategy that he's on. And because at the moment it doesn't look like he's been closed in even slightly, so 8.4 seconds is a pretty handy advantage to have as Brian Borg continues to apply pressure to the back of Harley Haber.
Yeah, and Kazuki's, I think he must have had a slowdown or something to get himself there, but Brady Myers as well is made himself past Greg Sharp, as we saw before, but Brian Borg is still doing well to, or is getting up on the back of Harley Haber, and he's going to have a run down the final straight now, and you can see the speed difference there for Brian Borg, who has a fair bit more aero, not so much being disturbed on the front of his car, so he makes that pass relatively easily. Just locks up on the entry though, and now Harley might have a little bit of a go back here, but I suspect that there's just not quite enough ponies under the bonnet of that Redback racing car at the moment to really be able to do anything with. So we'll see if Harley can do anything here. I did try and see if there was anything, as Brian Borg just runs a little bit wide there, but not wide enough for Harley to be able to do anything with. I was just having a look to see if anything happened between Corey and Harley. Wasn't quite able to catch anything, but yeah, obviously we're seeing in the chat some words there that indicate that something's happened. We'll see if we can find out what happened. But Brian Borg still defending from Harley Haber, and Harley's had a pretty shocking race as well, although he is up in position number 8 at the moment. So doing a relatively good job, and Brian Borg actually up in position number 7 at the moment. He's come up 11 positions in this race so far, so doing an excellent job for that cross-continental motorsports team.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're doing a great job at the moment. They're keeping the results solid. They're making sure they do what they do, as Brian Borg does go a little bit wide at the hairpin, almost the commentator's curse, but thankfully does not lose a spot to Harley Haber just behind. And taking that ultra-wide line can sometimes give you a very nice run down the back straight. So Brian Borg won't be under any threat going into the Wall of Champions this time around. But yeah, once again, a great result from Brian Borg, constantly punching above his weight. And the potential for a top 5 finish here today isn't out of the question, because Emily Jones is only 4 seconds in front. So anything is possible for Brian Borg, and if he can keep on his strategy, we don't know quite what one he's on, but if he can make sure he gets a good final second part of the race, as we are now over the halfway point, well, you never know what place he could find as he locks up again into turn number 1. So maybe just a bit too much front bias on that cross-continental motorsports car at the moment, because we are seeing that quite a few times. So if he can just wind that back a little bit, not only will he save tyres, but might be able to hook up the corners a little bit better, as now Mitch McLeod exits the race. So a lot of casualties around this infamous circuit, which was once the concrete jungle until Belle Isle arrived, but still proving it's just as fearful for the drivers.
Yeah, I think in some respects it's actually more dangerous than Belle Isle. I mean, there are so many possibilities for slowdowns here as well as off tracks. And I would feel that a couple of the drivers who have had to leave have probably hit the incident limit. I would not be surprised to see that on a few drivers at all. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see a couple more people fall victim to the incident limit before the end of the race this evening. It is a very long race. We've already been going for close to 40 minutes. And we've just tipped over the halfway point in this race. So it's a very, very long race this evening. And you still only get, as far as I'm aware, you still only get 17 incidents. So keeping that down for an hour and a half is going to be very challenging for all of these drivers. Even at the best of times in even a 40-minute race, it's difficult. So to go pretty much double that is going to be very challenging indeed.
Yeah, it will be. And like you say, I would not be surprised to see more drivers fall coming into the race as Corey Preston does finally come out of the pits and should be able to just rejoin the race and get whatever points he can. But the problem is Harley Haber is coming to turn number 1, so hopefully we don't see any kind of retaliation between the two. But Corey does indeed come out on circuit, so we'll wait and see if he's just around for points or if he's up for something a little bit more sinister, which is not what we like to see and would be very, very unsporting. So would wait and see, but hopefully we won't get to catch that on camera because that's not what we need to see. But regardless, we do have some good racing happening on circuit at the moment involving a number of drivers, and we'll wait and see if any of these battles can transpire a little bit because Kazuki is slowly catching back up to Jordan Ross. He's been chipping away just bit by bit as Sam Sutton hasn't quite been able to reel in the Japanese Radicals Online driver, but Jordan Ross not as quick as we probably would have expected. He's actually a little bit slower than Jake Burton at the moment, despite having slightly fresher tires. So Jordan, he does have a bit of damage, I'm actually just noticing now, to the right side of the car. And I'm just wondering if maybe he's found the wall somewhere around this circuit, and that is why his pace is beginning to fall off just a little bit more.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I think Jordan, if you do have a little bit of damage to the front wing of that car, or the front area of that car, probably can lose a couple of tenths a lap. There's a lot of straights on this circuit, and there's definitely a lot of potential to lose quite a lot of speed at the top end. So that'll definitely be something playing in the back of the mind of Jordan Ross for the rest of the race, and hopefully he can pull back a little bit of speed. He's marginally slower than Jake Burton, but also, importantly for Kazuki Mishima, slower than Mr. Slick Slideways. So he's going to have to pick up the pace if he doesn't want to come under attack from that Radicals Online car, and it's closing in at a couple of tenths a lap. So Kazuki will probably be with him in a couple of laps, definitely before the next pit stop phase of this race. So really has to take that into account and see if he can start pulling himself a little bit forward.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. But one driver that doesn't have to pull themselves much more forward at all is Jake Burton, who is just very quietly running away with this race out front now at 12 laps into his stint at the end of this one, and just quietly doing his own rhythm and doing what he has to. And well, he has to extend one of these next two stints out a little bit more because, of course, if he pits every 12 laps, he's not going to find his way home on just 2 stops. So has to extend one of these stints a little bit longer, but looking very comfortable, just controlling the tires where he needs to, and being a very good teammate to Sam Blacklock, because if Blacklock isn't able to score the points that he needs in this championship, he has to try and take points away from Brett Loxton. And yes, of course, Brett Loxton has a bit worse luck than Sam Blacklock has had in this race, finding his way down to position 18 at the moment. But if you have a teammate there that can just steal points away from your rivals wherever you can, just to help you out a little bit, that's definitely going to help come the final round of the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And despite the fact that we have 32 cars on the grid this evening, the strength of field is quite respectable, 3,699, which is a very good strength of field. So there will be some good championship points on the table. And if Jake Burton can take those away from any other person who's looking to steal that championship away from Mr. Sam Blacklock, then I'm sure he'll be very appreciative. That being said, though, there aren't really many people inside the top 10 at the moment, with the exception of Mr. Blacklock himself, who are really looking at contending for the championship. I mean, we've got Jake Burton, Jordan Ross has missed a few rounds so far. Kazuki Umishima's only done 2. Sam Sutton we haven't seen a lot of, nor have we seen a lot of Emily Jones. Chris Coxhead hasn't really been putting in. He's been putting in some decent performances, but not ones that are good enough to put him in championship contention. So there's no one really up there in this race today who's going to be doing much in terms of the championship. So Sam Blacklock, in terms of his championship, has actually been saved in a way today by all of that. But definitely Jake being there and taking points away from those other competitors who are around him is definitely going to be helping him.
Yeah, every point will matter, especially when you do get 4 different drop rounds as well. It does kind of save drivers a little bit, and I personally would like to see a few less drop rounds just to put a bit more pressure, make drivers attend a few more races so you don't get big lulls at the end of the season. But that's something for iRacing to keep an eye on, as Brady Myers is indeed closing in on our championship protagonist, and he's actually the quickest car on circuit last time around, only narrowly quicker than Jordan Ross, but nonetheless quicker. And he's so quick, in fact, that he's going to dive down the inside and almost make contact. And around goes Brady Myers. He's not going to be the fastest car on track this time around, but he will be the most stylish with a burnout at the final corner. Has to be careful with the rejoin not to get into the back of Wayne Burke, and also Greg Sharp narrowly has to avoid him as well. So not the smoothest rejoin in the world, but nonetheless a pretty good burnout. 6 out of 7 for me. I'm not sure why that was out of 7, but nonetheless, Brady Myers continues on his way and has to find a way past, once again, Greg Sharp, who is still limping around in a pretty damaged car and not quite getting the exit that he needs. But Brady Myers, he was looking pretty fast, the fastest car on track, and all of a sudden, his rhythm has been thrown out the window.
Yeah, well, you obviously know a few things about burnout judging criteria that we're not aware of, Bo, so I'll take your word for the 6 out of 7. But yeah, that was very ambitious from Brady Myers there, trying to force his way up the inside of Sam Blacklock. I think he probably just should have waited there, maybe trying to maximize the potential of the race a little too eagerly. And now he's got some work to do again. He's already made himself past Greg Sharp once this race, but he's going to have to do it again. And he's also let through Wayne Burke, who's been doing a good job to recover a lot of time this race after having an absolutely shocking start. And we thought that he was just looking like he was going to continue falling through the field, but he has started to make up some spots, and now currently sitting in position number 11 and working himself up onto the back of championship leader Sam Blacklock. Now, Wayne Burke is someone who can possibly challenge Blacklock for the lead of the championship towards the end of the season if he could put in some more good results. So now we have a few cars coming onto the pit lane, including Blacklock and Burke. I think Coxhead was another one to come in. So and Umashima as well. You're very correct, Bo. So Umashima, we said he doesn't have as long to fill up the car because he's obviously gotten to the point now where he can make it to the end on a full tank. So he's happy to come in now, take those fresh tires and try and make up as much time as possible. He's within good striking distance to pass Jordan Ross, but Jake Burton, I think, really has this all under control. He'll probably make it in towards the end of this lap, if not slightly sooner, I think.
Yeah, that's very well a possibility. As we look at Brady Myers just basically pushing Greg Sharp around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve here today, but not able to find a way past with a bit of a slide on the exit to boot as well. But Brady trying to apply pressure, trying to find a way past, but not happening at the moment. And Greg Sharp not making this easy, which he has absolutely no reason to. He always wants a good fight, and that's what so many of these drivers are here for. If you know you can't come for a race win, or you don't want to go for race wins, always here just for a little bit of a battle is what these drivers are looking for. And for Brady Myers, at the moment, he's battling the car a bit more than he's battling Greg Sharp with a big moment, and he will have to wait at least a couple more laps to take his position back. But taking positions back is not what Jake Burton's going to be doing, because he is our race leader in the pit lane, along with Jordan Ross, Sam Sutton, and Emily Jones, and Brian Borg makes it the top 5, all coming in as well. So very much the action arrives now. And Kazuki Umashima working his way down the back straight now, about probably 500 meters away from the wall of championships.
Brady!
And Brady Myers in a bit of controversy, Zach.
Yeah, sorry, Brady was very deep into the pit lane there and almost went up the back of the car that he was following, which was Greg Sharp. It was very close to being contact there as they came in, but managed to just get away with it. But couple of cars now just getting towards the end of the pit lane. So I think that up ahead, that is Sam Sutton is out, Jordan Ross is out, and Kazuki Umeshima have all come out as well. And Kazuki Umeshima, he's behind.
He's well ahead of
sorry.
Jordan Ross.
Yeah, he's well ahead of Jordan Ross. So he was able to save enough fuel in that middle stint there and also push hard enough that he could actually jump Jordan in that pit stop phase there, as of course Kazuki had already pitted the lap before. So nice job there from Kazuki Umeshima. And there are still cars yet to pit, but looks like everyone's pretty much starting to come into the pit lane now, as we've only got 14 laps left to go in this race.
Yeah, we do, and Michael Cracknell trying to make the most of those laps as he's right behind the back of one of our Redback Racing Team cars of David Miller, who gets a big slide on the exit and will just about move a side, I believe, or is that just a bit of a slow exit? But it does look like in the end it will be Michael Cracknell coming out and ahead, and of course Cracknell still a bit of a privateer. Of course he did do the V8 Scops race on the weekend with a team as well, but still a privateer in terms of anything. So for anyone who's looking for a quick driver, Michael Cracknell might just be your man to fill in your team. Always a very quick driver, always willing to contribute to the team as well. But at the moment, more drivers just filing their way into pit lane, including Harley Haber and Andrew Welter, who enjoyed their time up the front of the field, but unfortunately the race just hasn't quite gone their way here today. And they will have to cycle back a bit further to the midfield as the gap between first and second comes down to 6.5 seconds between Jake Byrne and Kazuki Umeshima. But with only one lap fresher tires, one lap older tires now for Kazuki Umeshima, does look like Jake Byrne, unless the concrete walls around Circuit Gilles Villeneuve do indeed bite him, it could be his race to lose.
Yeah, definitely. And Jake's a pretty consistent driver, and unless there's a massive amount of pressure on him, he's usually able to, drive away without many mistakes whatsoever. So I think it takes something pretty unnerving to cause Jake Burton to send himself into the fence, unless he, of course, blows an engine or does something like that, which we have seen from time to time throughout this V8 Supercars season so far. But Kazuki does have a fairly big gap to make up, as you said, by 6.6 seconds at the moment. And even though Kazuki Umeshima is lapping very closely within his fastest lap of the race, he's going to have to do a lot more than that.
Sorry, I was just getting very close there between a whole bunch of drivers heading into turns 5 and 6, and involved Brady Myers, who's trying to find a way past Brian Borg. Really gave him a big hit, almost contact, almost pit maneuvering. Brian Borg, he's in the grass, breaking up the inside, and he was using every bit of track and a little bit more as a side-by-side, almost contact, and there is contact. Brian Borg has to go through the grass there, and he will get a slowdown to boot, and he's going to go a big hit in the back as well, as he brake checks Brady Myers, so he's not happy about that move. And Brady does look like he's going to continue on the move. I thought he might redress that,
I think
but
it might have been a slowdown.
It was a slowdown for the driver of Brian Borg, but he got pushed off by Brady Myers and tried to clear it without losing the spot to Brady. So a bit of rough driving between the two of them. And I believe last time we were here at Montreal, we did actually see the driver of Sam Blacklock doing that to quite a few drivers as well, just trying to clear a slowdown in front of another driver and actually, basically brake checking. It's not the best tactic, one I'm not fond of at all. So we'll continue on and just see what on earth continues in the next few laps. So we do move our attention now to the driver of Emily Jones, who's trying to catch up to the back of Chris Coxhead, but are not able to do anything at the moment. The gap's standing at about 7/10 of a second as they make their way into the very tricky corner, because you want to carry a lot of speed into the left, but it's actually better to be really, really slow. Strip it back down to basics, slow in and fast out. Build your speed through the right-hander onto this little straight where you can get past as done, like we saw Brady Myers attempt to make happen, but was not able to pull it off in the end, as Emily Jones closed up quite a lot there into the penultimate chicane on this circuit, right out to the wall as well, using a bit of the grass to boot as well. But still, a couple more laps of that will be required before she has any chance of a move on the back of Chris Coxhead. But very brave on the brakes, it has to be said, for the Trans-Tasman Racing driver.
Yeah, she's actually looking very good. I don't think she could have done that previous chicane more perfectly. Took a really nice amount of curb where the car actually almost glides along that inside curb there, and very deep on the brakes. And now she has a little bit of a run on Coxhead. It's not going to be enough to do anything this time, but she's definitely showing some good pace in that car, and she's definitely keen to get herself into the top 5 this race, and it's very much within her grasp. So looks like Chris is pretty strong throughout the first half and this last straight and chicane. But Emily's looking very strong through the middle sector of the track as she takes a very tight line comparatively to Coxhead through turns 1 and 2 there. This is a tricky little section as well. You've got to take a lot of curb over this right-hander and cut as much across this one as you can without running it wide into the wall. If you get that transition wrong, you can end up in the fence very easily. A little bit of a lift through that curb there, very hard on the brakes into the left-hander, and Emily almost getting very close there to the rear of Chris Coxhead's car. But Chris Coxhead just running that slightly, as you said, going slower through that left-hander, gave him a better exit for that right-hander there, and he's been able to pull out a little bit. And a couple of cars still making their way into the pit lane as well, as we see Ryan Shelton just coming into the pits. But Wayne Burke will go back on board with the Synergy Sim racing car. He's made himself past Brady Myers and Greg Sharp after Brady had that little mistake there, and is continuing to press on. He's been sitting behind Sam Blacklock for a little while now. Doesn't seem as if he's really been making much inroads to him at the moment, but just having a look at the lap times, and Wayne Burke and Sam Blacklock are still lapping within about a tenth of a second each other the last time round, and does look like that gap is getting a little bit smaller for Wayne Burke. Both of these cars very damaged aerodynamically. Obviously, Sam missing the complete rear boot of his car, and Wayne missing a little bit of his bonnet there on the front fender, and also having a bit of a crumpled effect there, which is definitely going to cause a few vortices to come off the front of that V8 Supercar, which is definitely not what you want. Don't want all that drag coming off the car as he's trying to go down the straight and being nice and slippery, but gonna have to wait and be patient, catch himself back up. But now Emily Jones is much closer to the back of Chris Coxhead, and if she can keep her cool through this next section of corners here, she'll put herself in very good stead to have a nice run down into the hairpin, which is definitely one of the places where she's been looking very strong. So they come into this chicane here. It takes a little bit of grass on the entry there, but good amount of curb on both parts. Just getting a little bit sideways on the exit though, and that killed her run as they come down into the hairpin. So she's going to have to be very brave on the brakes, which she's not going to be able to do, and wisely so. But she does take a little bit of a wider line on the entry. That's going to give her a straighter exit and maybe a little bit of top end speed down towards the end of this straight here, Bo.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I am noticing about Emily, just riding on board with her for a little bit, is that she's actually short shifting out of the corners, out of the slow speed corners, just to get that extra bit of bite, get the RPMs down so it doesn't burst in a wheel spin, and she can just try and make a move as she's basically bumping Coxhead through the wall of champion chicanes. And that was very, very aggressive from Coxhead through the chicanes. Of course, maybe a little bit extra speed than he was intending on carrying, just because he got a bit of a hit from Emily Jones. But the gap now grows out a little bit more once again, which is a shame to see. But I will see if anything can happen there, as Brady Myers is now coming into that exact corner, this time behind Greg Sharp. So we've seen this battle before. We saw Brady trying to find a way past Greg Sharp, but it wasn't able to happen for the TTL Esports driver. We'll see what he can do this time around. He gets a much nicer exit. You can see that Greg Sharp's dancing around the circuit, trying to break the slipstream for the TTL car, but it's not going to happen because Brady just slots in behind and makes sure he gets every bit of the slipstream he can to carry himself down into turn number 1, now apexing into turn number 2. And this is a very tricky corner because you're trying to get on the throttle. It wants to burst in the wheel spin because, of course, the car is really loaded during that corner because it's a very tight hairpin. But Brady not able to get the better traction that he needs that time around to set up a move into 3 as he makes his way through this very fast right-hander where you get as close as you can to the wall, and if you clip it, you're going into the wall at a high rate of speed on the other side. But doesn't happen this time for Brady. But also no overtakes happening as well because, of course, so much damage to the front end of that car. It looks like an absolute write-off at the end of this race. So Richard Hampstead won't be too happy that he's filing in a new bill or an invoice for a new chassis for Brady Myers. But this time around, he has to sit behind for another lap. So although he looks a lot quicker at the moment, just not able to position the car where he needs, not able to get the runs that he needs. And also Greg Sharp doing a great job defending.
Yeah, Greg Sharp's, a veteran in the V8 Supercar. He's been doing this for a very, very long time. And he's always, doesn't matter if you're a fast guy or a slow guy, he'll race you and have a bit of fun with it, because at the end of the day, that's mainly what Greg is here for. He's not usually fighting for race wins, just here for a good old time and to have some fun, just like many of our drivers are. And just a reminder to all of you, if you're thinking about getting into the iRacing V8 Supercars official series top split on a Monday night, it's as easy as hitting the join session button on the iRacing service. And if you work yourself up high enough and get up a good I rating, you may be able to see yourself and rewatch a race that you were in on the iRacing Esports Network. And give you a reminder as well to give us a like on this video and chuck a subscribe to the iRacing Esports Network if you haven't done so already. But we have been seeing fantastic numbers in terms of people who have been joining these races throughout the season, and seen at some points over 100 cars queuing up to try and have a go around some of these tracks. So if you are interested, you're thinking about making the leap, I couldn't recommend more to do it. I swear, if I wasn't commentating, I'd be doing the races myself, because they are a ton of fun, and I did used to do them a little while ago, although I am fairly rubbish in a V8, as I'm sure anyone who's seen me drive one can pretty much attest to. But Brady Myers, he's not doing too badly. He is still cooped up behind Greg Sharp. And as you said, bro, he's just not been able to position this car really where he wants to make an overtake. And he is very late on the brakes comparatively to Greg Sharp as they come into the final hairpin there.
Yeah, and he just lit the rear tyres out of the hairpin once again. So this lap's already gone as well. So he's not going to be able to get the run. And it's all over Red Rover for this lap at least, unless he does something miracle in terms of traction out of the wall of champions. And you can see just in front there is Wayne Burke as well, was falling off the back of Sam Blacklock considerably. And he's had a few laps that have been quite slow as well. So for Wayne Burke, the race has kind of fallen away from him just a little bit. So not what he would have wanted, especially after qualifying 7th on the grid. He would have been looking forward for at least a top 5. Now finds himself down in 9th and maybe in the threat of falling outside of that if he does continue at his current pace, because I'm actually having a bit of a look and none of his lap times are registering. So maybe a little bit of an issue somewhere in the circuit, whether it's for internet related reasons or other. But Wayne Burke having a bit of a rough race, and it's only looking to get worse as Brady Myers gets very close to the wall on the exit.
Yeah, absolutely. But Stephen Varga now having a little bit of a look on Kyle Stokes. And according to my timing, actually, by Wayne's last lap was a 1:41.4. So did register for me. But as you said, something definitely happened there, because that is an awful lap time, nearly 2 seconds, or pretty much 2 seconds slower than anybody else who's currently circulating around this track here at Montreal. But Stephen Varga in that Redback Racing machine is looking very good behind Kyle Stokes here, getting some nice traction out of the right-hander there.
Huge dive from Brady Myers up the inside. That was from 100 years back. And as easy as you like, Greg Sharp just goes right underneath and takes the spot back. Sorry to cut across you there, but Brady Myers broke about 2 country yards too late and absolutely flew past the apex. No chance of pulling that up.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I just caught the tail end of that, and that was extremely ambitious. And good job of Greg Sharp to have the awareness there to stay wide, cut it back under, and regain the position. Very nicely done from him. But Brady Myers, I mean, we said just not long ago that he is looking to struggle to get past, but he's starting to become a little bit desperate in the sense that he's just trying to make anything work to get himself up into that top 10 position. Definitely a good achievement to say you made up 20 spots in the race, but you are going to have to pass that last guy, Brady, if you want to be able to say that for reals. So he's going to have to definitely find a less ambitious way to get past. But Sam Sutton now is sorry, you go on, Bo.
Oh, sorry, it was just Brady Myers getting so close to the wall on the exit, but you were right, because of course he was the quickest car on circuit at one point in this race, and out of nowhere is just struggling to even get past the top 10 car at the moment. So he could have challenged for the race win if it was qualifying up the front of the grid here today, but it just hasn't panned out like that. But you are right, because Sam Sutton is doing a good job in position number 4 at the moment. He's in a bit of no man's land at the moment, which is sometimes a bit of a bad place to be, because you've got no one to put pressure on you, because the car behind him is 13 seconds behind. So huge gap there for Sam Sutton. And like I said, he's got to slow down immediately. So that is my point exactly, is if you've got such a big gap to the car in front, a huge gap to the car behind, you can sometimes find yourself just losing concentration, finding yourself getting distracted by little things, and you can make little mistakes just like that. So out of nowhere, Sam Sutton just makes a little error and falls back down the order, which is not what he needs. But Steven Varga continuing just to try and apply a little bit of pressure to Andrew Zackerson in front of. Kyle Stokes is there as well, so potentially a little bit to gain from all of these drivers at the moment. But Steven did have a little bit of a moment last time around, judging by the lap time, a 1:42.6 compared to the other cars in front of a 1:40.4 and also a 1:40.3 for Kyle Stokes. So not what he needs, but Kyle Stokes is not having the chicane that he needs, because he runs straight through, and well, he might not get a slowdown because he did slow down to a pretty much crawl, but no, he does get a slowdown and has to serve it now. So Stokes will lose that spot to Zaxxon. Will he lose it to the Redback Racing Team car? And he does, cuts across the nose, and he's not going to make turn one as well, or he will, but almost Daniel Ricciardo-esque on Sergio Perez in 2014 in the Formula One Grand Prix. But Steven Varga so late on the brakes, but that was a bit ambitious, cutting across the nose of a car just like that at such high speed, Zach.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting it, but to his credit, he did make it work, and he just ever so managed to pull it up in time for turn number 2. So credit where credit's due to him for making it work, but definitely ambitious for him. But Brady Myers, another man who's tried being ambitious this race, not as ambitious as he has been, although he does give a big punt to Greg Sharp, and Greg's almost going to go into the wall there, and that was pretty rude there from Brady Myers. That was clear front to rear contact, and Greg Sharp having to get back on the brakes to avoid just absolutely clottering the wall there. So be surprised Brady doesn't redress that just out of respect, but
Doesn't look like it.
yeah, it doesn't look like he's going to do that, which is interesting. So interesting choice there from Brady Myers, but he has moved himself up into position number 10. So now he can say that he has made up 20 positions throughout this race so far, but there are still 4 laps to go. There is a very slow car of Wayne Burke just up ahead of him, although Brady did lap a little bit faster than, or just slightly slower than Wayne last time round, but did make that overtake. But he could potentially get another position, or maybe Greg Sharp will have a bit of a fight back. He was holding up Brady for quite a while, so maybe he's still got a little bit of pace in that car and can work his way back, but the gap has started to stretch out quite a little bit at the moment.
Yeah, it has, and that's not what you need, but he is trying to make good progress at the moment, and obviously he did have a lot better pace than Greg Sharp, because he's already managed to pull a pretty sizable margin despite the contact at the hairpin. But you can see just how much he's throwing the car around. So maybe the setup's not what he would have wanted, or maybe just struggling with the conditions, because let's not forget, it's 40 degrees track temperature here today. So the tyres definitely getting a bit of a punishment once you go back on board, with Steven Varga still trying to find a way past Andrew Zackerson. And well, he's got a pretty good exit this time around as Zackerson almost tags the wall there. Maybe a few little scratches on the side of the car. Looks like, unless my trading paints hasn't loaded, an unmarked car, so maybe not in the team at the moment, but maybe he should be, because we've seen him constantly perhaps starting at the back of the field, but always making his way through the field, making good grounds and constantly improving. So Andrew Zackerson really proving to be a bit of a force in this championship in the years to come, perhaps. But at the moment, Steven Varga wants to take that title away and wants to move himself a little bit further into the top 15, because of course 14th sounds a little bit better, but he only has a handful more laps to go, because of course 4 laps left in this race, so he has to start trying to make a move pretty soon. Nice run through the chicane, and it looks like he will be able to close up a little bit, but will he be close enough to try anything into turn number 1? Because actually he's closing a lot quicker than I thought he would, but not close enough to make a move at the moment. But at the moment, we do have a little bit of a fight, because Sutton has been trying to make it. Oh, sorry, we do have Ross trying to make a bit of a move at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure the information that we're getting is
Yeah, I think Fonty's having a bit of a nightmare. He's a Kiwi, we'll forgive him.
Yeah, I don't know if his time zones are playing with his brain or something, but yeah, Fonty's whispering in our ears something that's not exactly happened, which is totally fine, because 99.9% of the time Fonty is 100% on it and a totally rad dude, so we'll forgive him this time.
Well,
but,
rad dude's debatable.
Yeah, maybe. But Stephen Varga and Andrew Zackerson do trade places there, and Varga does make his way past the privateer car of Andrew Zackerson, and I'll put my seal of approval on what you said, both. You're looking for a driver. It doesn't look like Andrew Zackerson. It just gives a little bit of a, well, maybe he won't be getting any team opportunities from Redback Racing because he's racking up a tiny bit of a damage bill for them on some composite panels, possibly. But Andrew Zackerson, he started this race, for reference, ladies and gentlemen, 32nd position, and has just lost 14th, but still 15th position from 32nd, up 17 positions, extremely respectable. And a V8 Supercar, very difficult car to drive. He's been going around at this stage for 1 hour and 12 minutes, which is a feat amongst itself. So Andrew Zackerson, I don't know if you're looking for a teammate, but I am advocating for you if you are. So hope someone picks you up soon, because he has put in some really good efforts, and possibly with a bit of help and support from a team would go even further. But Chris Coxhead and Emily Jones, that battle is one of the closer ones, definitely at the moment. I think definitely the closest battle on the track at the moment. We do only have 2 laps to go as it stands. Although I did say that is the closest battle at the moment. Another battle that is starting to get very close is Wayne Burke and Brady Myers, because Wayne Burke has just been putting in some fairly shocking laps the last few rounds. Brady 0.4 of a second faster the last time around, and has just gotten himself within 1 second of Wayne Burke, which means that his slipstream is just going to be ever so slightly stronger than it was the last time, and using a lot of curb is Brady Myers. As we are having a look with Wayne Burke, you can see that TTL machine starting to close in, especially under brakes. Brady Myers looks very strong comparatively to Wayne Burke here, and possibly Wayne saving a little bit of fuel, though he does have a lot of damage to that car, and has been carrying that damage for an extended period of time. So struggling all throughout this race. So the lap times are not exactly surprising, but definitely going to have to put on a little bit of a show if he wants to keep position number 9. Will Wayne Burke, as Brady Myers just starting to close in bit by bit, and Wayne's got some traffic up ahead of him. But it looks like that CMR car is going to get out of the way. The CMR having a bit of an unlucky night tonight, but being very respectful to their fellow racers, and getting out of the way whenever they've had lap traffic coming up upon them. So very good job from those guys, and we'll hope to see them further up in the field the next time by. But Brady now still closing in on Wayne, and just edging ever closer and ever closer, as Brady just struggles for a bit of traction there, Bo.
Yeah, he's not making too many friends with Dunlop tonight. I don't think he's using every millimeter of traction point or contact patch on those tires at the moment. So he's making a bit of an effort at the moment to try and hunt down Wayne Burke. But the bad news for him, he's only got one more tour of the Canadian Lakeside to make that happen. So for Brady, he's got to find time now, and that was a very nice run through the final chicane. You can see he's just closing up a little bit more, just able to carry a lot more speed down this front straight because of that fantastic exit we saw last lap around. He was so much better into turns 1 and 2, and again just closing up so much. I was not expecting this. So he's just blown by, and Wayne has given him full respect to go past, or maybe, just maybe, he thought that Brady overshot and was going to plow into the side of him. But all of a sudden now Brady Myers finds himself in that spot, which is a fantastic effort for him, of course, from where he started in this race. It was an absolute nightmare at one point, but it was never a nightmare for Jake Burton, because he is already about to finish the final lap of the race in the race lead, and it never really looked in doubt after the first few laps. He managed to get past Kazuki Mishima when he slowed down. He managed to get past Jordan Ross when he slowed down. But Jake Burton, he never slowed down, and he will take out round number 7 of the iRacing official V8 Supercars Official Series Championship. Kazuki Mishima comes across the line for a second place and a bit of a dance over the finish line, with Jordan Ross bringing home a fantastic P number 3 on the podium as well. Sam Sutton, well, he had a bit of a lonely race in the end. He will come home in position number 4. And Chris Coxhead, well, he came under a little bit of pressure in the end from Emily Jones and managed to hold on for P number 5 in the end. But we'll see how Wayne Burke and Brady Myers get on, because Brady still, he's not quite out of danger yet. Any little mistake into the final chicane could allow Wayne Burke through, because of course it's such a big braking zone. It's so difficult at this race to make sure you nail the apex, especially when there is a car so close behind. But we'll see what happens here for the TTL car. He runs a little bit deep, runs across the curb, but will be able to hold on for a last lap pass despite a bit of a slide out of the final corner. So great job from Brady Myers, even if some of the moves were perhaps a little bit controversial, including the one on Greg Sharp, as the rest of our cars do end up coming across the line now. And Steven Varga having to go a little bit defensive against Andrew Zackerson, who has not let him go. So this battle is going to rage on all the way to the start-finish line. And Zackerson gets a much better run. We could be on for a drag race here, as Varga has to go defensive, has to block one way, but Zackerson goes the other way. And who's going to get it across the line? It does look like the Redback racing car will get it in the end, but only just, as it was very, very close between those two. Great race all the way through, and exactly what we like to see is his team boss, Mark Samuel, comes across the line for 17th, and then Warren Pickering in 18th, the last of our cars on the lead lap. And what was a pretty interesting final few laps there, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of cars changing position there, and something happened to Brian Borg as well, because according to my timing, he was in the pit lane with a lap to go, if I'm not entirely mistaken, and he finished down in 16th position. I could have sworn, or 15th position rather.
His last lap was very slow.
Yeah, something happened to him on the last lap. I'm not entirely sure what happened, because he was definitely higher than 15th. In fact, Zackerson and Varga both passed him. So yeah,
I'll go hunting for that, Zach. You run through what was in the end a great race and the race results.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you, Bo. Jake Burton for TTR, coming off a bit of disappointment on the weekend at the VSR Showdown, but no disappointment for him this evening. A race victory in the iRacing official V8 Supercars Series. Well done to him. Kazuki Umeshima, Mr. Slick Sideways, comes home in position number 2, with Jordan Ross for Synergy Sim Racing coming home in position number 3 to round out our podium. Sam Sutton had a bit of a lonely race, all by himself for the last half of that. Came home position number 4. Chris Coxhead, fighting with Emily Jones, took home at position number 5, ahead of Emily Jones for position number 6. Sam Blacklock, after getting double punted on the first corner of this race, made an excellent recovery up to position number 7 and salvages a little bit of unfortunately for his championship, but definitely a positive step to be able to recover as many positions as he did. Michael Cracknell started 19th, moved himself up to 8th, but Brady Myers, although in some cases a little rudely, he made himself up 21 positions this evening, started pretty much dead last, 30th of 32 cars, pardon me, and finishes the race in position number 9. And Wayne Burke finishes and rounds out our top 10.
Greg Sharp comes home in position number 11, with Brett Loxton recovering to P12 after the early lap incidents. Steven Varga and Andrew Zackerson fall all the way to the line and finished less than a tenth apart from each other. Brian Borg would spin on the final lap in one of the weirdest ways I've ever seen out of turn 6. So last lap and out of turn 6, if the director can in any way get a replay of that, because I've never quite seen a car spin like that. It was in a straight line and already on throttle, and it just broke away from him already on the straight. So he wasn't exiting the corner by then. He was just on the straight. I've never seen a car spin like that. But regardless, he does in the end finish ahead of Carl Stokes in 16th, Mark Samuel 17th. Warren Pickering brings it home as our last car on the lead lap, ahead of what was a lot of casualties around the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve, with David Miller in 19th, Mihail Ladyshev, Ryan Shelton, all finishing beyond 2 laps down, with Harley Haber in the end finishing 4 laps down. So something's happened to Harley as well. He's had a bit of a nightmare in the final few laps. He finishes ahead of Steve Jansen, who was a lap down about a few minutes into the race, unfortunately. Such was the luck he had in this race here tonight. But he does finish ahead of Andrew Welter, who also fell casualty of the circuit, along with the likes of Riley Blythe, Corey Preston, David Moore, Mario Vlasic, Mitch McLeod, Thomas McMillan, and Brett Cananzi and Ross Rizzo. Those two did not even make the end of the first lap, which was a big shame because, well, there was a lot of chaos on the opening few laps here, Zach.
Yeah, there was some massive casualties and put a lot of cars out of position, which made for some interesting racing. And as we saw, we had a train of cars, which, if I recall correctly, spanned from about 12th position all the way back to 28th. So we had a 16-car train pretty much, and there was some great racing there. But I think the incident limit was something that was going to be very tough for all those guys. And I know my timing definitely indicates that a lot of people got more incidents than they should have. But I don't think that's entirely correct. But I think a lot of people did get very close to or reach that incident limit this evening. And I think that's possibly why possibly Wayne Burke was so generous in letting the like of Brady Myers through in the last stage of that race as well, possibly just very close to that incident limit, which is something that everyone has to nurse just as evenly as everyone else because we're all in the same rules, but definitely an interesting factor into such a long race. 1 hour and 14 minutes was the race time for Jake Burton this evening, which is I'm not sure if it's the longest, but it's definitely one of the longer ones that we've done here on this Monday night series.
Absolutely, but it's always nice to see the different strategy elements. When we do have two pit stops, it always brings in a little bit of another element. But one series that will have another element brought to it this week, live on the iRacing Esports Network, is the Porsche Super Cup Australasia from Phillip Island. So those cars, they don't have the most downforce in the world, but they've got to make use of whatever grip they've got heading into the ultra-fast corners around Phillip Island. And that's not alone because, of course, more cars that have no downforce that need downforce on the circuit includes the LeBlanc Australian Online Supercar Series on Friday night, round number 12 from Brands Hatch. And they've got a 60-60 race, so two different races, and should be pretty exciting as well as the finale of the International Major Series, round 14, the end goal, where Josh Nowak should be crowned champion after pretty much dominating the series in the end, built up an amazing lead, but he has to first clinch the checkered flag at the Myrtle Beach 400, a very unique combination that we don't often see, so make sure you catch the action there, because that's not one we see too often, and you do not want to miss it. But from us here at SimSpeed TV, it's been a fantastic broadcast. Once again, round number 7 is done. Next week is round 8, and it's going to be even more exciting. It's going to get closer and closer as we begin to find out who's a contender and who is a pretender. But on behalf of Zach and Fonty, who have been awesome here tonight, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real-world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.